Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this Land Services SA webinar. Today's presentation is focusing on VE documents for variation or extinguishment of easements. Before we start, we have put you all on mute so we don't have any external noise coming through, and we kindly request that you leave any questions to the end. The presentation will only run for approximately 10 minutes, allowing time for questions after. So if you have any questions throughout or after, please enter them into the question box for us to address at the close of this session. My name is Sandy and I look forward to presenting this to you this afternoon. The Land Services SA team that has produced this webinar is myself, Sandy, Jamie and John. We are all property examiners. The three of us have an extensive knowledge and experience in land services, and we hope this will help in preparing your VE document when you are trying to vary or extinguish an easement or right-of-way. In this session, I will be covering VE documents. I will be going through what the panels are used for in the document and any other requirements before lodgement. I have also included some definitions to help people understand the difference between servient and dominant land, and some other hints to help reduce phone calls and requisitions. These webinars have been introduced to help educate the industry and to reduce requisitions. Here I've included some definitions of terminology that were used in regards to the VE documents, so you can understand what they mean before we start. Firstly, the dominant land means the land that is in favour of this easement, and in this example, the dominant land is allotment 1. Allotment 1 has a right to use the area marked A for the purpose that is shown in the plan or in the creation document. The easement on the dominant title would show, together with an easement over land marked A in the plan with the creation document shown at the end of the text. Whereas the servient land is the actual land that the easement is going through. So in this example, the easement labelled A is inside the boundary of allotment 2. Shown on the title of the servient land would be the same as the easement text for the dominant title, but it starts with subject to, not together with. Here is another two statements that you will come across: easement and gross title and service easements. An easement and gross title is a title that is created in favour of an authorised body or government body, for example, SA Water, a council or minister. So instead of being in favour of land, it is in favour of an authorised body. So we will create an easement and gross title in their name. As regards a service easement, this is an easement that is a statutory easement that is created pursuant to the Real Property Act. They are only for sewer, water, drainage or electricity supply purposes. They are shown as a service easement in the text of the easement clause, and there is no easement title issued for this easement. A VE document can be used for 3 different scenarios, which is pursuant to 90B of the Real Property Act. Firstly, you can vary, extend or reduce the easement or right-of-way over the servient land. Secondly, you can also increase the land that has a right over an easement to include other land owned by the dominant proprietor. And thirdly, a VE document can be used to extinguish an easement or right-of-way. But in a VE document, you cannot change the purpose, covenants or conditions of the easement. If you want to do this, then you need to extinguish the easement and then do another TG document or grant of easement. Here is page 1 of the VE document. Here I will go through the different panels and what is required to be entered into these different panels. At the top of the page, you will need to delete the inapplicable, depending on what you are doing in this document. The next panel, the land description panel for the servient land, should only show the title reference for the land that the land has the easement over it. The next one is a land description panel for the dominant land. This needs to show either firstly, the land that has the easement in favour of, or secondly, if there was an easement in gross title created for this easement, then this title reference needs to be shown. Or thirdly, if a service easement is involved, then there will be no title reference for the easement and not applicable would be shown. The servient and dominant proprietor panels need to show the current full name and address. If the name of any parties has changed, then a change of name document will need to be lodged as number 1 in series. There is some exceptions, for example, minister names and SA water. The next panel is a consideration panel. This needs to be completed, and if there is money shown, this does not affect the registration fee of the VE document, like it does for a grant of easement document. In the next panel is where you need to identify which easement you are dealing with by showing the identifier and which plan it is in, and what document created this easement when possible, so we can make sure we are extinguishing or varying the correct easement. In the next slide, I will discuss the operative clause. There's 3 different options in the operative clause, highlighted in green at the bottom of the page. Option A is when you are fully extinguishing the easement as regards the titles involved. When it is a full extinguishment, there is no need to have a plan showing this. Option B is about varying the position, and of course a new file plan would need to be lodged depicting the new position. And finally, option C is to extend the dominant land to include other land owned by the dominant proprietor. So you will need to delete the inapplicable. This is the outer cover of the VE document, and you need to ensure that you have assessed the document for stamp duty purposes and provide a stamp duty number, and also the printout to be attached. And of course, you'll need to complete the new title instruction panel. And if there is an easement of gross and it is only a partial extinguishment, then you will need to make sure that you pay for this title as well. Here is an example of a consent form that will have to be completed by the registered interest, which is shown on the title. For example, the mortgagees, lessees, etc. So ensure the consent form is attached to your VE document. The consent of the State Commission Assessment Panel is required for a VE document when the easement has been created or shown in any plan that has planning approval. It could be a very old easement that has been dealt with, and there may be a really old plan or an old docket. So if there is town planning stamp on it, then you'll need to get the SCAP consent. In a VE document, you may have only one dominant title, but many servient titles. And provided they are all the same easement with the same creation dealing, it can be dealt with in one document with one number and one registration fee. It also applies to where there is one servient title and many dominant titles. As long as it is the same easement, then it can be included into the one document. If you have reciprocal party rights or rights of way, then they can be dealt with in one document, as they would have been created in the same document. When working out how many new title fees are to be paid, basically you only pay for each title once in a series of documents. For example, if you have a VE followed by a TG in series over the same 2 titles, you only pay for the 2 new titles, the whole series of documents. Here's an example of a VE document where they are extinguishing party rights. So there is 2 different servient and dominant owners, by showing firstly and secondly throughout the document being relevant to each title. Here is an example of where the easement being extinguished is a service easement, or there is an easement in gross title. The example on the left shows not applicable in the land description for the dominant land, as there is no title reference for the service easement. And the one on the right will show the easement in gross title reference. Here is a couple of key points that you need to make sure that you have attended to before you lodge the document. Check you have assessed the document for stamp duty. Check whether you need SCAP consent. Check the fee calculator to check the fees on the LSSA website. Check whether a file plan is required, and if so, contact a surveyor. If wishing to fully extinguish the easement, then make sure that you have all the titles that have a right over the easement and all parties will need to execute. That completes the presentation part of our webinar. So we'll now finish off with some questions. Okay, so we've had a couple of questions about obtaining a copy of the presentation. So in the next couple of days, the PDF version and the webinar itself will be available on our website in the Industry Education Hub. Sorry. So yeah, to get a copy, you can do that. So anyway, thank you for so much for listening and attending to our webinar today. If you'd like to attend our next session, it will be on the 22nd of September, and we will be focusing on variation of bylaws. And you'll be able to register via the Industry Education Hub. Thank you for attending, and hopefully we'll see you at the next webinar.